Well, welcome to this episode of Bill and Kipp's Excellent Bible Adventure. I'm Kipp McClure.
I'm Bill Brunson.
And we are so excited to talk about the Gospel of John. Now, we started this series sort of because our names sort of fit in with the name of the movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. But,
True.
But also because, well, every time Bill and Ted go anywhere, they get into a phone booth and they drag some historical figure back with them. And so we sort of feel like every week we're sort of going and we're bringing back a little bit of history with us to talk about. Well, today we're going to be talking about what Jesus does at the temple in the second chapter of John, toward the end of the second chapter of John. He leaves the wedding at Cana of Galilee and moves toward Jerusalem.
Right.
And he shows up there and, well, he finds something like this. Another one of our props.
Mm-hmm.
Guess what this represents? Because we didn't have the money to buy the real thing.
Well, yeah.
But, it represents.
Strange tiki torch?
It does appear to be a strange tiki torch. We're trying to make this represent a cage that you might put an animal in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right. So
use your imagination, people.
Yes, that's right.
This is where the imaginations come in.
That's right. Put on our thinking caps, and we'll get there. So just imagine that there's a bird in here, and Jesus comes to the temple, and there are all these animals. Tell us a little bit about what was going on with that.
Well, in the time of Jesus, the way the temple worked, you had sacrifices that you had to make. They were animal sacrifices made for basically different levels of sin and different issues in your life, and sacrifices you would make so that you, for this sin, you had to sacrifice 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, or it might be that it was a sheep, or it could be an ox. I mean, it could get very large.
You have
and you have to imagine that if you are living way up in the Galilee and you are going to the temple and you know you're going there and you will make a sacrifice there, well, when you go, the question would be, okay, I know I need to go and I'll be sacrificing 2 turtle doves. Now, do you try to catch 2 turtle doves in the Galilee and then keep them alive as you travel? Or maybe it's Passover and you're supposed to carry an unblemished lamb.
Right.
Do you try to get the lamb in the Galilee and carry it and keep it unblemished?
Yeah, and what do you do with the lamb when you got to go in the restaurant?
Right.
I mean it's a tough,
where do you park a lamb?
Exactly.
I mean, these are big questions. And so the temple had become a one-stop shop. And so you could go to the temple and you could get anything that you needed to sacrifice in the temple. And the temple also had its own currency, because you remember in this period of time, the Jewish people oftentimes were using Roman money because Rome occupied Israel. Well, that was dirty, and any money you had was dirty. Because you were dirty, because you're going to the temple to be forgiven, so you're carrying the money, and so it's dirty because it touched you.
And Roman money would have had the image of the emperor on it.
Oh, absolutely,
and
the Emperor Caesar.
Don't want that in the temple.
And so, in where the temple was located, if you were standing toward the sheep gate of the temple or the teaching steps of the temple, along the left-hand side of the temple, you would go through an archway. And beyond that archway was a series of stalls that had been built. The first stall was the money changer. And that was where you would take your dirty money that you've been using all day, every day, and you would put it in, and then they would give you the temple money. Now, exchange rates always in favor of the temple. Just like when you do that in the airport. The exchange rate's always in favor of the person
best to go
behind
to a
the
bank,
counter.
not the one.
There we go. And so you would always exchange your money for temple money. Then you would go to whichever stall you needed to go to, and you would buy from them then this sheep or turtle doves or whatever. Now, it's believed that the temple had people working for them who raised sheep, turtle doves, and pigeons, and oxen, and cattle, and all these other things.
They had the whole industry.
And so you basically are exchanging money for money that is it's unfair exchange rate, so you're not getting as much money back for what you give them. And then you're going and taking that money you just got and you're giving it back to them to get an animal that you're going to take in to the temple, and you're going to have sacrifice there that you're not going to get the meat from, really. And so they're going to have that. And it's quite a system.
There's quite a few hands in that particular system.
Yes, and the odds are always in favor of the house,
yes,
it appears, in this system. And so that was what Jesus is struggling with when he gets there, because you have this very poor person who simply wants to they want to reconcile with Yahweh, with God, because of a sin that they've committed. They want forgiveness. And in this period of time, it's before the sacrifice Jesus makes for us, where we simply pray and we ask for forgiveness, and we know that Jesus forgives us. In this period, you have to do something. So imagine a person with no resources whatsoever having to walk all the way there, and maybe they've had to sell something they loved, or maybe they have had to go without food, whatever it is, so that they have the few Roman coins to drop in to exchange for just enough of the temple coins to take down to buy their 2 young pigeons, because they're too poor to even afford 2 turtle doves. And so then take them in and have them sacrificed on the altar to be forgiven. Imagine that agony that's on them if they can't come up with the money to exchange to get the turtle doves or the pigeons.
So the money really for the poor becomes the barrier.
It is.
To forgiveness.
You can't get forgiveness if you don't have the money to buy the animal to go and sacrifice. And Jesus walks into the temple and sees this being played out right in front of him. You can imagine him walking under the archway, which now is called Robinson's Arch because of an archaeologist that first found that the archway system that was there and first uncovered the stalls that were there. And you can imagine Jesus walking under this archway beside the temple into this courtyard and seeing all of this played out. And he gets so angry because he says, my Father's house is supposed to be a house of prayer, and you made it a den of thieves. And he braids a whip and goes in and chases out the money changers and overturns the tables. And so he messes up the economy of the temple right away. He's chasing out all the animals and setting them free. It's sheer chaos in a very tight space. And you can imagine birds flying, sheep running, cows moving, and money going everywhere, and everybody on their hands and knees trying to grab it while Jesus is swinging a whip and moving things out. It's a great scene. It is a great scene.
And so, obviously, the temple authorities would have been sort of made aware of this.
Yes. I'm sure it caught everyone's attention.
An incident happened on aisle 3.
Yes.
And so they come down and they say, under what authority do you do this? And, under what sign do you do this? Now, sign is a big word. It's one of our big words in John.
It is, yes.
Shows up 18 times, and 3 of them are in chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, it started in the story that precedes this of Jesus' first sign, and first miracle is that changing the water into wine in Cana of Galilee. And then in 2:18, they ask, what sign can you show us that you have the authority to do this?
Right, because he is just a nobody.
Yeah.
From a no-place town like Nazareth And he's shown up and has messed up everything.
That's right. He's messing with the system.
He is messing with the system.
And so Jesus then looks at them with an answer that I'm sure made them even angrier.
Yes.
He says, you see this temple, the one that we're standing in, the one that took 46 years to build, tear it down and I'll build it back in 3 days. I mean, the building that they're all in.
Yes.
Tear it down.
Yeah.
I'll build it back in 3 days. They didn't appreciate that response. And they didn't appreciate him for a lot, very much from there on out.
No, it's one of those moments because he says, you see this temple, I can tear it down and build it back in 3 days. And it's one of those moments where he's doing that two-level talking again.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That we talked about earlier.
Bedelia sort of.
Yeah, Amelia Bedelia, because he's saying that, and they're looking at it going, well, you're not a mason. You're not going to be able to lay the stonework. I mean, 46 years to build this, and you can do it in 3 days. And, of course, we know ultimately the temple of his body is torn down.
Right.
And 3 days it comes back.
And so if you've got sort of that awareness, the paraclete, the spirit with you, you can kind of see the two layers. And so the audience is going, that's not what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But the temple leaders, they don't get it.
They don't get it.
And
they don't get it all the way through the story.
No,
they never get it.
They never do. And so, but I love the word sign because it keeps coming up. What is the... show us your authority. What is it that shows? And so throughout, Jesus is giving signs of his authority.
Right.
And I think in reality, Jesus gives signs of his authority in our life, and we can look backwards often throughout our lives and say, well, that was sort of a moment where God was at work.
Right.
And it was a sign. I didn't recognize it at the moment, kind of like the religious leaders, but now that I look back, I realize what was going on, what God was doing. But my favorite of these is the very last time that sign is used. And it's in John chapter 20. And it says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, the very end of the book, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. And I imagine if we look back in our life, we would probably have to say there are so many signs that we didn't catch, that we didn't record, that we didn't tell. But we realize that God has been at work in our lives all the way through.